Hello, and welcome to Gallifrey's Most Wanted. I'm Ross Aiken. I'm Old Who.
My name is Melvin Pena, and I am You Who.
And I'm stuck in a time loop.
Oh. Getting dizzy, Jeff? After last night's episode, I'm a little dizzy. So, folks, we're going to be talking about 73 Yards, another Russell Davies script. I'm looking up, hold on, who directed? Oh, I lost it. But it's a Russell Davies script, and for me, I'm going to
Was it Julie Thingy who did Space? No, she did Boom. It was someone else did this one, wasn't it?
We will get to that part. Why don't, hey, Melvin, since Melvin's out in the Midwest dodging tornadoes, so what did you think of 73 Yards?
First off, the director was Dylan Holmes Williams, just for the record. This is an extraordinary episode of Doctor Who. It's an extraordinary hour of TV. I think it may be one of Russell's best Doctor Who scripts ever. Ever. I've watched it 4 times now just to sort of like wrap my head around it in the way I had to around Boom last week, because this one last week it felt like what did I just watch, and trying to figure out how to make it make meaning to me. And this one was just so absorbing and so gripping from moment one to the very end that I felt like I needed to watch it again just to sort of let it sink in a couple more times. I thought it was extraordinary. I thought Millie Gibson, I think what she's been in, this is her 5th episode, including the Christmas special. This is very easily her best performance as Ruby Sunday. I felt like there's no way she is 18 years old when I was watching it the second and third times, just because of how masterfully she acts, how competently she performs everything required of her at every one of these sort of life stages. I loved that, as opposed to sort of old age makeup for Matt Smith in Time of the Doctor or old age makeup for Clara in Last Christmas, I really love that they went ahead and just cast another actress to play the aged Ruby Sunday.
Amen.
It takes nothing away from Millie Gibson.
I think makeup would have taken it away.
Yeah.
I think that young lady in high def, it's hard to do, or if you CGI'd it, we would know. It was just better to recast.
And it was also
when we got that 40 years later, there was a moment of panic where I was like, oh God, they're going to do old makeup, aren't they? This is going to suck.
Yeah.
This is going to take me out of it. And they didn't. And I was just like, oh, yeah, good.
Yeah.
But again, just very briefly, it was sort of, for me, a combination of other things that Russell's written before, sort of the turn left, like what if sort of scenario with years and years, in terms of the way that massive geopolitical movements can affect individuals, because I think that's one of the things that Russell does very, very well, is show not only just giant cataclysmic events, but really grounding them in the way that they affect a single person. But also the thing I kept thinking of was, there's a great book that I read at the start of this year called Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mandel, who's a Canadian author. And that book sort of deals with the way that sort of time travel, in a way, can affect various people at various points in their lives, and the way that those points intersect in weird and strange ways. But yeah, no, I absolutely loved this. Absolutely loved it.
All right, Jeff, your thoughts. I have an idea what they are because I saw them on Twitter last night.
This has been, and I suspect will remain, my favourite of the series so far. And I think the reason for that is the way it sent my brain off after I'd watched it. I've only watched it the once, and I then spent the rest of the night thinking about boundary spaces and liminality, and that it sort of compounded that sensation that the universe is completely wrong at the moment, how we've moved away from alien to paranormal, as Kate says, and I was really pleased to see Kate and the turn there as well at the end of that scene.
It's what you get when you hire a Redgrave. You know what I mean? It's like,
And this was maybe her best performance as Kate as well.
In a lot of ways,
and
yeah.
The crazy thing is that she was delivering exposition almost the whole time, but the way that Russell can put that into a character's mouth, and the way that Gemma delivered it really humanized what really just amounted to, also as we're setting up a new era of Doctor Who, this is what UNIT is. And I'm like, they made it part of the story though, which was incredible.
We also No, absolutely. And we also get a Dr. Light story where we don't get to the theme tune at the beginning, which again plays into this sort of theme of music that we've had. And all of a sudden the Doctor is absent, and there is an absence of the music that grounds us and places us in the show. And so there's a very weird... There's something going on here that is really intriguing and gets the brain working. And I've seen, so it seems to be a Marmite episode, this one, generally online, in that some people love it and some people have really not loved this episode. But
I know,
crazy. That is insane. I mean, I haven't looked at the internet at all, really, and that is shocking to me, because this is so... it's to me just like it seems so obviously extraordinary. Yeah. Like for me, it's a sort of a Blink-ish episode, and I know that people have problems and qualms with calling Blink a sort of archetypal place to watch Doctor Who, but I feel like it's the distance, exactly what you were just saying. Like, there's no music here, there's no Doctor. Like the things that you take away are what define what Doctor Who is, and I really love that about it.
Yeah, the only thing we have that shows it's Doctor Who is that TARDIS, and doesn't that look beautiful by the end of the episode?
Absolutely.
Oh my God, that was beautiful set work. Well, I watched it with my wife and a friend of hers who has watched Doctor Who but not watched it in a couple years. And Leslie was like, one, she's getting good at it because she recognized Margaret Sweet?
Oh, Susan Twist?
Susan Twist. What is her name? I got her name wrong every time. Susan Twist. She goes, is that? And she just looked at me and went, and just silently pointed at the woman and went, she didn't want to ruin it for our friend. And I went, yeah, that's her. And I like that. But I thought, I think it is one of the best Doctor Who's I've ever seen. I think it's one of Russell's best. What struck me is I was thinking, they're doing a scary one. He normally gives the scary ones to Moffat, because Moffat does creepy really well. But I forgot how well Russell can fuck with your head.
I had goosebumps within the first 5 minutes of that episode.
As
soon as that woman turned up, that flicked something.
The
in
woman
me,
in black?
I went, oh.
Yeah, no.
I feel like Russell is really good at anxiety. Which is a different thing than scary.
Yeah. This was a bit about this. He wanted you to feel the isolation.
Yep.
Because it's about isolation. It's her. It's again this time the Doctor isn't the one who's turned the companion into the hero. It's something supernatural. She's been put into a position where she's alone. She feels like she's stalked, and everybody turns on her and abandons her. I even like the thing where she tries to have a normal life with the 3 dates. I thought that even didn't feel weird. It was an important thing to show. How would someone travel through that world alone? Where would they find solace? How would they find solace? Because imagine the depression, the paranoia, the loneliness, and you feel it as it builds and builds until she takes agency with it by going, wait a minute. That's the guy that's going to blow up the world.
And that's one of the things that I kept thinking about, like on subsequent rewatches, is like I was trying to think when you were talking earlier about like how, like literally how it starts or what initiates things, like the Doctor didn't get her into these, or thinking about what was responsible, like was she ultimately responsible for what happened to her? But for me, it's like I had to go back and look and see, it's not her that disrupts the fairy circle at the beginning. Like it's nothing to do really with who did what. There's something about, and Jeff was talking about, and hopefully we'll get really deep into this, the sort of liminality, the issue of boundaries, that it's when the TARDIS lands. I think that is what causes, like there's something about the proximity of the TARDIS to that fairy circle, to that boundary, between the land and the sea, that
Which
there's
created
something.
this kind of time travel thing with her.
It's
I
sort
get
of like,
that, yeah.
and you see it as soon as they step out of the TARDIS, that crazy folk horror image of the bent tree. That there's something that, like, it's almost like a sliding doors sort of scenario where we're in a branch timeline. I know that some people might, and again, I haven't seen, but like there may be an impulse to say, well, none of this happened at the end, like it all got erased. And I'm like, no, it happened. It was just like this was a different timeline, that we saw a branch of what could be.
I also love that Ruby has to complete the circuit.
Yes.
She has to complete the circuit to break it, to break free of it, but to also see it through to completion as well. There's a lot of metaphor in there, and there's a lot of this is truly someone going the long way round, which we never. I know that the one where he's punching the crystal wall is a fan favorite. I personally dislike that story immensely. I find it a chore to endure. And I can't quite explain why either. I think it's because it's absolute bobbins. And it's not as clever as it thinks it is. It looks gorgeous.
Yeah.
I don't think it's as clever as it thinks it is. But this is that. Again, it is Ruby having to live to the end of her life and be stoic and just endure it for the sake of, because she completes the mission quite early on, really.
Halfway through, about halfway,
about halfway through the journey in her timeline. And then 40 years with nothing but her living with this shadow 73 yards away constantly. But it's done, because she says it's done now. But no, she's got to finish that journey. She's got to finish the journey of life. And it seems that it is a non-existence because nothing happens. Otherwise, they'd have shown it us. It's a non-existence.
Yeah, though I like how they do the passage of time, that section with the birthday cards and the decorations, and just continuing looking out the window, toasting her every year. This is the only friend I've got. It's kind of really sad.
It's my constant companion.
Yeah. And I was thinking about these things too, like especially in those scenes, because I kept thinking to myself, well, she's clearly, you were saying that nothing happens, but she clearly makes a life for herself, like that she has friends, she has relationships. But then I looked again, and when she's 25, there are a bunch of cards in the window. When she's 30, there are some cards in the window. When she turns 40, there's like 2 cards in the window. And then that sort of like, you get to that point in the hospital at the end, or the hospice or whatever it is, where she tells the nurse, I've been abandoned by everyone my whole life, but I've never been alone. And part of that, for me, thinking about that was what you were saying about Heaven Sent. And I think there are strong parallels here.
Yeah.
One of the things we always talk about with that is that, it's a truism now that episode is about grief, as it were, like what it's like to live through grief. And so I was thinking about this one the whole way through, not necessarily in relation to that, but thinking about, chronic, whatever it happens to be, chronic illness, whether it's chronic anxiety or chronic depression or, again, chronic major illness. Like, how do you live with something that is your constant companion through your entire life? Like, how do you deal with that, and how do you regard it through the different phases of your life? And I feel like that is something that we get, where in the Capaldi episode, he's more or less doing the same things over and over again. Here, there's adaptation, there's change, there is, she regards the being outside her window, the dark cloud hanging over her, the black dog, as Samuel Johnson used to call depression, that like is hovering near her, but her relationship to it changes through the phases of her life, and I think that's extraordinary.
When everything else has been pushed away from you, you accept whatever else is left, don't you? Yeah. And you can grieve lost friendships and lost relationships as much as you can grieve the passing of someone that you love. Because it's the same thing. It's the end of something and the beginning of something new, which again is a boundary thing. It's constantly that they're there all of the time and all the way through this season. I suspect really the first big clue is What Blue Yonder. And that's the most blatant expression of where Russell T Davies is heading with Doctor Who. And then that's his mission statement, if you will. And then it is incorporated throughout. We have the space babies who are left living on a boundary existence between infancy and where you begin to learn more and develop, to the point that they're operating a spaceship. They're stuck in their own boundary. We have the Doctor stood on a landmine with one bar left, literally on the boundary of life and death. And then there's all of the talk, and again, it's very explicit in this episode where they talk about cliff tops being the boundary point between the land and the sea, and that is something magical and powerful, and something where solidity meets liquid and air meets all, and there's so much going on when you sort of dig into the text a little further and allow what you're seeing to take you away on this expression of examination on a deeper level, which is really nice to be able to get your teeth into.
Yeah. I think with the grief too, because Russell likes, because this is a very quiet episode in a way too. There's a lot of time passes when she's alone and she's not speaking and no one. I mean, there are a lot of these moments where she is silent, and then when we get into the part where she infiltrates the crazy guy's campaign. But when she's sitting where she's back in that chair 80 years later, or whatever it is, 80 years later, sitting and staring at the TARDIS again, and she talks to her nurse and goes, "My mother died. I don't know when. No one told me." I mean, and that's there for a reason. So that made me think about it. What if the grief of losing a parent, she didn't get to experience because she didn't know it happened. Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden, as she's about to pass, is she forgiving her mother because she knows what happened? Or is she still grieving the fact that she never saw her mother again?
There's no reason it can't be both.
Yeah, I mean, but that line is very specific. It's there at that moment, and that hit me in the chest. It was like, oh my God, I can't imagine, because you could see the scene they're in, all that love, and then within 5 minutes, her world is destroyed.
And that was possibly the most chilling scene where the mum goes past in the taxi, and it's
And that's an echo of what happened in the Christmas episode when they had that sort of momentary, like time fracture, and she immediately turned against her as well.
Well, she didn't know her.
Yeah.
That was it. Yeah. That's what her mom would be like without her. Yeah. Also, I like that we're getting no answers to who the hell Ruby really the fuck is. Just that she was maybe, because you were saying, Melvin, the TARDIS lands, it starts whatever happens.
Yeah.
But it doesn't choose the Doctor to do it.
No.
Whatever it is affects Ruby, not the Doctor.
Yeah. So, and that I feel like has to do with that idea of again what we were mentioning earlier about Russell's technique or habit of having big events reflect on an individual, is that there's also the sort of idea of perception. So we're getting all this through Ruby's perspective. Like an Iron Barnard's character, Roger Ap William, like in any other sort of Doctor Who episode, he would be the big villain and we'd get lots of scenes with him doing machinations or whatever, but he's really peripheral to this as well. What this story is, and it's the thing about that other character that we never get any explanation of either, Marty Bridges, which is another great name that has to do with, like, Marty is the French word for Tuesday, which again, like Monday we had last week in Boom, so there's just like days of the week sort of thing.
And we got Bridges Sunday
and Bridges, things that that bring things together. Like we never get any idea of who she is, where she's from, what her journey is, but all of this is filtered through Ruby's consciousness, like, and her perspective. So just to throw that out there in terms of, like, I don't think that that some of these things are supposed to have grounded answers, because again, like even the abandonment stuff, the having to do stuff on her own, all of this we're seeing is through Ruby's perspective, how she's dealing with it. Like, yeah, we don't know necessarily who she is in the bigger scheme of things, but I feel like we learned so much more about her in this episode, just watching her deal with things and how she perceives her reality, than we have in any of the episodes to this point.
Yeah.
I think there's an issue with people have been taught and have studied over the years how to consume media, and that media is X% exposition. You have your beginning, your middle, your end, and everything by the end has to be wrapped up in a neat little bow. But of course, this is Doctor Who that we're talking about, and Doctor Who will leave things absolutely unexplained, and good, because it's left for the viewer to fill in those blanks for themselves up until either a definitive answer is or isn't given, you know. And we saw this a lot with The Timeless Child as well. People needed conclusion to that, whereas actually no, you can leave this open-ended, and we're never going to know what the woman was saying to people to turn them against Ruby, but it was obviously the worst thing you could ever expect of someone that you love, you know, that thing that is going to turn you against them. And for some it must have been absolutely brutal, you know, but we can speculate that, but ultimately it doesn't actually matter.
Yeah, not at all.
It had the desired effect, and that's all that mattered, was it did its job.
And I think that's what it is. I think the implication here is that it is revelation, that it is anagnoresis. Like it's something has been revealed to these people. Because initially, again, watching it the first couple of times it happens, she tells Josh in the bar or in the pub to go ask if she knows if he has seen the doctor, and she even says the words. And then to the next person who does it, she says, you know, ask them if they've seen the doctor, and they both run away. So you're like, okay, maybe it's tied to something in the words that they're using. But then the mother goes, and then other people go, and they just run away. They run away in panic. And I feel like whatever it is, and again, I don't think we need to know that. It is something that shakes them to their very foundation. It is something that exposes them to the it's like the never-ending story when they go to the magic mirror gate. The person, the little elf Engiwook says, you know, when people are faced with their true selves, most people just run away screaming. And I feel like whatever it is something that hits them with the force of revelation. And what that is, I feel like, is completely unimportant, because like in the God complex, there's always a room for you. That is the worst thing that you could ever imagine. And I feel like that is much more powerful and evocative an image than to know specifically what it was that she was saying to them. Yeah.
I saw people commenting it's like turn left, it's like this. I really I got some of the uncomfortableness really reminded me of Midnight.
Yeah. Yes, yeah. And I'll tell you the other story that sprung to mind. It's completely nothing alike. Ghostlight.
Oh, yeah. You don't know what's going on.
It really gave me that, because there's bits in Ghostlight that really do wig me out a little bit, and I love it, and it's probably my favourite of that season. But yeah, Ghostlight kept coming up in my head as I was watching it, and I was like, why is this making me feel like I'm watching Ghostlight? It's and like I say, that's the favourite of that season for me, Ghostlight. And I think this has been the most engrossed I've been, other than trying to pay attention and pick up clues and things.
Yeah, we get a clue for next week.
This has actually been the most emotionally engaged I've been with an episode, and I think a huge part of that is down to how good Millie Gibson is.
She's so good. I saw a couple people posting, it's like, we're 4 episodes in and she's not really shown anything, and I was like, I mean, no, she doesn't have rambling speeches, she doesn't have these deep conversational scenes, but she's hitting her beats. And they're wonderful. When she walks up to him, when he says go away, and he's standing on the landmine last week, and she's like, no, not happening. Mm-hmm. There's a lot going on between them, and in this one, she's not asked to speak a lot. You know, she has those funny kind of conversations with the dates. It was let's lighten the mood. We're fucking with them. Let's lighten the mood. It's a little funny. But when she gets into the thing, she's not saying anything of consequence to anyone.
Yeah.
When she's working for the campaign, she's answering questions. Oh, she's one of them. She's observing until they get to the stadium and she realizes, oh, this is where I'm heading to this.
Actions speak louder than words, and you don't need text to define someone's character. Mm-hmm. It is in their action and their reaction to things. And Ruby acts and reacts more than she says. And I think that really is key to understanding her as well. I used the word stoic earlier, and she remains stoic throughout this episode. She grits her teeth, and she just gets on with what she's got.
What she can control.
And what she's got to do. Yeah. Within her reality, within what she's having to endure and put up with, you know. And I think that tells us more about her character and gives us a deeper insight into her as a person than a huge effusive speech, because I find them a little bit grating after a while, and I get a bit bored of we've got to have this moment for this character to establish them. We talked about doctor moments, and doctor moments are doctor moments. Companions don't need doctor moments. Companions need to be present and engaged in the text of what is happening around them, and Ruby is absolutely that.
And be our eyes. She's very much. I think in some ways that Millie Gibson, when she is 40 years older, you know, it's like 20 years in when Kate happens or something. It's like, you know what I mean? That's the last time when Kate abandons her. That's the last time she tries to figure it out. That's when she just gives up. But
that one I think is still very early though.
Yeah,
that's within like that first sort of yearish, I think, because I think she says it's been about a year since she left the Welsh coast. But that's when you go into that next Roger App William phase.
Yeah,
which is like 20 years later.
Which is 20. Yeah, and when she plays, you see her about 20 years later. You see her when she realizes why she's here is when she sees him on TV.
Yep.
I can't control anything else, but I can stop him from blowing up the world. I can try to stop him from blowing up the world. But when she is 40 years older, Ruby, her body language changes, how she holds herself. When she's sitting, I swore to God, and there is hardly a touch of makeup on her. No. There's some contour to create a false, you know what I mean? There's a little bit. It's really well done. But you see a middle-aged woman who has lived a life when she's sitting there. There is nothing body language or anything about her at that point in the scenes in that part of the timeline that is the Millie that was running up the hill. I blew me away. That blew me away. And costume, makeup. I like the future. It's just a little future, and they make jokes about us. You know what I mean? But it was so good, and I loved. He was what I like. You said, Melvin, that this could have been a big villain who taught a big machinations. Yep. And I love that double fake. I like that double fake because he acts like one, he talks like one, and he's just a scared little. He never does. They're aiming that way, and he runs. And the way he runs, they all run. I think the director said, "Run like your ass was on fire."
Yeah.
Because they all aren't just a little running, backing away. I mean, her mom bolts.
And screams, like the scream every time as well. That is so unnerving.
Yeah. So I like that. I thought she was wonderful. She carried this episode.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was hers, and she grabbed it. And it's like she's what, 18 years old, 18 years. It's kind of like she's such a good actor, and I think it's because she was a soap actor. Like Sarah Michelle Gellar is a good actor because she was a soap actor. She had to, work. She had to do a play 3 days a week. At 16, 15 or 16.
We've talked about this before and how working on soaps is just like, it's like the grind for an actor to hone their craft and learn their skill, because you're dealing with real feelings and real emotions.
Yeah.
Characters who are firmly grounded in a reality. And so I think that works really well with Doctor Who, because you need someone who has a grounding in a reality to bring you into it and make you go, I am invested in your stories, because the Doctor is so ungrounded in reality that you need that someone. So someone from a soap background, actually, who was, I mean, she was in Coronation Street, I think, for 3 years.
Yeah, but from 15 to 18. That's that's a good time to soak that all in.
That is paying your dues and learning your craft.
Yeah. I saw Tommy Lee Jones talk about it one time. He said he was on a soap years ago with Stockard Channing, and he's being asked. He goes, "What?" He goes, "Oh, it's like a woodworker. I learned so much doing scenes with Stockard Channing in this silly little soap for 3 months because we worked 5 days a week." 8 hours a day, just acting, doing crappy lines and having to make it believable, and doing it with zero prep, meaning here are your lines for tomorrow, memorize them before you go to bed. So, but I thought she was a rock star in this. I thought she was great, and I liked that the director kept it. The scary moments, nothing was huge. We've seen a lot of big. It's very street level.
And that's one of the things that I was going to say when y'all were talking, exactly in line with what y'all are talking about right now, is that one of the extraordinary things about the way Millie plays this, as opposed to, you could imagine an episode of a similar sort of structure with Karen Gillan or Jenna Coleman, where the way that they played the character was on a par, trying to match the energy of the Doctor, where I feel like the longer we go with Ruby in this episode, the more Millie underplays things.
Yeah.
And I feel that is not only like a Millie thing, but it's also a sort of character thing, because as time goes on and she is trying to figure out living with this weird specter, and then trying to figure out how to use it to her advantage, how to make it do what she wants it to do, that there is a sense in which she is, in which the character, in which Ruby Sunday is also sort of taking advantage of the fact that she is a woman, that she is overlooked for the most part, that she can
She has a line about that, doesn't it?
That she can find her way into scenarios and let people underestimate her so that she can evaluate what is going on. There's a sort of, the joke in the Dr. Mysterio, where the Doctor is like eating sushi in the hallway and says, deep cover, where there's something that Ruby like learns as she's doing this, to allow people to underestimate her while still being herself in those personal situations. Like, she's very in command of her life and her scenario in those dates that they show, those periodic dates where she actually tells the dude, like, except for what happened in bed, that was definitely you. But again, this sort of coalesces with another thing that was in my mind, is the sort of theme of, and none of us are qualified to talk about this probably, but well, definitely. But there is a sense in which one of the other sort of guiding themes of this story has to do with womanhood and aging, because you get the Sean Phillips, who was brilliant at the beginning in the pub as the old lady in the pub, the old lady who again turns out to be Ruby, appearing right at the beginning, and various other sort of aging female characters in this, like, gives it a very strong female, older, wiser woman presence that just sort of suffuses through this episode. And I don't know if y'all had any thoughts on that. It's just something that kept occurring to me over and over again, is that some of the presences here, some of the most important things are done and said by older women.
I think you have a point. I think I'm going to rewatch it in a little bit, because by then the edible have kicked in fully. Yeah, so I'm timing it perfectly. It's like that time I ate mescaline while I was watching the Batman movie from 1966. Yeah, it kicked in about halfway through.
I took acid and watched Event Horizon, and that screwed me up for life. So there you go.
That was not a good. That I don't. I just watched that the other week, and I don't. No.
It's ruined the film for me because now I think it's hilarious.
I agree. I think you have a point, and I wanted to bring this up, because seeing Jeff made me think of this about companions and about how she's very grounded. I think in old Who, original Who, there are some grounded characters. Sarah Jane Smith is very grounded. Joe is a little big. Everybody's a little big, but you know what I mean? But there are ones that are grounded. I think since Chibnall, I think Yaz is very grounded. She never does. She does what she does because she's a trained police officer, and a woman, not because she's an actor having a big moment. I think
another soap actor though.
Yeah, another soap actor. The African American, the actor, the other original companion of Jodie, Blanken. Tosin Cole. What's his part's name? Ryan. He's really grounded in a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'm seeing a lot of that. I'm not going to say that for Bradley Dan, the actor played Dan, because you hired stand-up comics to be. They're going to handle some of that for you. Yeah. Because I got 2 soap opera actors, and the star. You're going to be the older guy's going to be the Harry Sullivan, because that's what role they really play. They're Harry, I got the joke line, but I think it's a little more grounded because I think Yaz was like that, and I think it is. I think because in Modern Who they're big, you know what I mean. The companion, because she is so grounded, the thing where the companion is the center of this massive problem, you know what I mean? They're the MacGuffin. They're, like Clara is for 2 years. I don't mind that there's a mystery about her because it's a mystery. It's not that she's the center of a universe. It's we don't know, and it's terrifying to people of great power. And what would scare people with power?
Well, I mean, one of those things is wisdom, and just to tie up what I was saying a moment ago, like the thing about aging is that to go back to what Jeff was saying at the beginning, and y'all were saying that the story ends or her mission is complete when she defeats Roger at William, but the story doesn't end until the loop is complete, and for the loop to be complete, she has to become the old woman.
Yeah.
So there's something again about aging and femininity to where she is not complete until the story is complete, until the loop is complete. And so there's something about wisdom and having achieved or having attained that station. And again, it doesn't have anything to do with a big moment or big character. I'm sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
And that's compounded by the fact that the only other young woman we see in the story is the woman who is clearly abused and mistreated.
Yep.
By him, and I think for me probably one of the most impactful scenes was Ruby's apology to her.
Yes.
Like, I knew this was happening. I knew this was going on. I am clearly aware of your pain and your suffering, and I couldn't do anything to stop it because I had to get to this moment to be in the right place at the right time to give him his just desserts. But her pain at not being able to intervene and to have to step back from it also draws a parallel with the Doctor situation last week, where he had to stand and only could use his voice. She couldn't even do that. Mm-hmm. And so I think when we get them back together, because I like to think that the learning experience, maybe not the memory of the events, but the learning experience that she goes on doesn't go away just because the loop is completed and the timeline no longer exists. It's become a closed timeline. It happened only for that time and that time only.
Well, I think you're right, because she says, I've been to Wales 3 times, and when you
Yep.
ask what the third time is, she goes, I don't know. I guess it's this time.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
Oh, it was so good.
One of the other things I want to bring up before we leave this story is we were talking earlier about the narrative and the unanswered questions, and what is it that is engrossing, or what is it that is absorbing about this story. And one of the things that we haven't really touched on is the sort of what was advertised from last week is a sort of Welsh folk horror, that there is something ancient here. And one of the most ancient things, I kept thinking about it and had to sort of go back and look through sort of graduate school notes, is one of my professors at Notre Dame was an 18th century scholar and a scholar of ancient narrative named Margaret Doody. And so she wrote a book around the turn of the century called The True Story of the Novel. And I went back and looked even just at in which she argues that whereas the sort of main line in literature studies for a long time was that novels began in the 18th century with like Daniel Defoe, Robinson Crusoe, and stuff like that. Her argument was that sort of sustained narrative of growth and things happening in a sort of teleological way has existed since the ancient world. And so she examines Greek narratives and Egyptian narratives and all these kinds of things. And so she comes up with, there's a section of her book called Tropes of the Novel, in which she says, these are things that you will find in just about every novel. And so one of them, the first one is the rexis, or the cut. It's like, what is it that brings you into narrative? What starts a story? And here, we were saying earlier, like the TARDIS lands, they break the fairy circle, like that is when the narrative begins. And then there's this idea of muddy marshes and shores, like going from crossing these liminal spaces, also sort of how that influences narrative. And so again, I think one of the things, this is all just to say that one of the things that I think is appealing to me about the story, and I think it's worth thinking about, is even though a lot of things are unclear and there are a lot of unanswered questions, this is it's an old story. This is an old story, and I think that is one of the things that, for me, trying to tease that out, like, again, we don't get a lot of answers, but there are so many things here that are just fundamental to the way narrative operates. That, whether you want to say that this is a new to Who episode, something that you would show someone who's never seen this before, I feel like regardless of what you do or don't know about Doctor Who, that this is a narrative that stands on its own because it is a narrative about narratives. And I just wanted to get that out there because it's just been swirling in my head how many like classical, ancient, old things are here. That even though we're getting this in a new way, that there's nothing here that's particularly like new to narrative. Like it's the structure of it, the way it goes, the way that it's a loop, the way that you start and you come back to and then it's a nice clean ending. Again, even though nothing may have been resolved, you get a complete narrative here. I'm sorry, that's really out there.
No, it's interesting because
No.
The story in and of itself is a closed narrative within the whole of the season as well, and it can be a standalone episode. We start with the TARDIS beautiful materialization on the cliff top. So in a way, like classic Doctor Who stories, your story starts with the arrival of the TARDIS, and that's as old as Doctor Who is, and that, as you say, is your beginning. You're into the story, and then by the end of it, you've had the resolution. It may not be the resolution you were expecting, and it may not be a resolution that was we've saved the world. Well, we have, but only in this timeline, only in this closed circuit. But it's interesting that the Doctor's aware of that timeline before the fairy circle is ever broken, because he's talking about it as the circle breaks. Does he bring this reality into existence by talking about that as he breaks that circle? Is that why? And then Millie reads the scroll with Mad Jack, and it's very clever. And
that's one of the questions about the whens of this story that makes this interesting as well, because you feel when you land that this must be the modern day, because when Millie goes down to the pub, they have that whole joke scene about using her phone to pay, So you feel like we're in the modern day, but then she lives, what is it like? And this weird thing about the 73 yards thing is I feel like there's a lot of 65s in this episode. The room costs are $65. When they're doing the interview later on, he says something about 65,000 pounds. But there's also that, again, that 73. So there's something about, like, for me, I sort of assume that is the length of time of this narrative, is that she lives 73 years through this timeline. But that
makes sense.
But that defeating Roger
Yes, because
William
the creature
here,
gets closer, the haunting gets closer and closer to her as she ages.
As you approach
exactly,
the moment.
yeah.
As you approach that fundamental moment, the moment that the TARDIS broke in and created this timeline or this narrative. Because defeating Roger Ab William, she did it in this timeline, but does that mean he's gone? Because if we're back at the start of the narrative, at the end of the episode in 2024 when they land, then all that is still time. We only see silly, which is also really incredible. One of the other things, before I leave that crazy like metatextual or theoretical framework behind, is that one of the things that Professor Doody saw as another sort of theme or tradition of the novel is that that an ending is that all narrative is seeking reunion with the goddess, which is like, that is out there. But again, it folds back into this too, because she has to become the person she sees at the end in order for that break in the narrative to heal and for the story to continue along its path. Again, I know that's way out there, but there's something again about femininity and power and the idea
of womanhood, and
yes.
the fact that older women are also ignored more than younger women, because
yes.
younger women are there to allure men, and men hold the majority of power. And we see that play out with the other character, the other female character, the young what was her name, Molly?
Oh, Marty,
that's it. Oh yeah, Marty, that was it. Yeah,
who is living her own narrative. Like, again, like the way that these stories are intersecting. Like, there's an entire story for Marty that we only see hints of.
I loved it when she says he's a monster. That delivery was just like, because it wasn't loud. She didn't scream. She just goes, he's a monster, because what was she been going through?
Yeah.
And she's had to be silent, and it's like that all she's wanted to say for all the months of the campaign is he's a monster. Mm-hmm. And she finally can.
And it's equally impactful as we've now got a general election coming up in less than 2 months.
That was weird that it came right
very on the nose.
Yeah.
Yeah. Talk about timing, blimey. Considering this was done, a year ago?
Yeah, this was filmed very early on.
Yeah.
I think this is one of the original block, because the reason it's a Doctor Light story is Shooty had other commitments.
He was in Barbie. So, all right, I take it all three of us really liked it. I think this is going to go on that list of I'm going to watch this all over a lot. This is one I'll go and watch and just
I like it more now than I did at the start of talking to you both.
I'm going to go back and make my lunch and watch it again. I was going to start watching them from the specials through just to kind of in the background today, but I think I'm just going to go back and watch it again.
It's one of the great things for me about especially these last two episodes and having them both written by showrunners is that I feel like both RTD Moffat last week and RTD this week are at the absolute sort of top of their games. And the fact that we're only just over the halfway point in this season, that makes me very, very excited for what's to come. I feel like we started very silly, and I feel like RTD seasons tend to do that. Tend to start very big and broad in terms of broad comedy. Think about the first Donna Noble when she returns after the Runaway Bride. Why can't I remember the name of that episode?
Partners in Crime.
Partners in Crime. Like how big and broad that we're waving it fat. And by the end, we get Turn Left and stuff like that. There's
Midnight and Turn Left back to back.
Yeah, it's just extraordinary to have these two episodes, especially after Space Babies and the Devil's Cord. It feels like we are being sort of going in this funnel towards something. And for me, again, thinking about what it is that the old Ruby says to people, we don't know what that is, but it's going to hit, I feel like, with the force of revelation.
Yeah. All right, guys. Any recommendations from you guys?
Yes. I mentioned a few episodes ago the passing of Steve Albini. Well, his band Shellac have just released what will now be their final album. It's called To All Trains. It's available on Amazon Music if you've got that. It will not be on Spotify because Steve Albini hated them and pulled all of their music off of Spotify. But it is on Amazon Music and probably available to buy in all good record stores. Listen to it. It's probably my favourite album since their first at Action Park, which is so good. But yeah, so that came out just 2 weeks after his passing, and it's a fitting tribute to a guy who has probably impacted more music that you've heard than you would possibly imagine.
How about you, Melvin?
I saw a relentlessly silly, for all the high-flown concepts I've been talking about today, I saw a relentlessly silly movie the other night as I was packing from 1988 called Hell Comes to Frogtown.
Yes!
I don't think I've seen that. I'm going to have to check that out. How bad is it, Jeff?
I watched that. That was showing when I went to go to a meet and greet with Roddy Piper, where I got him to sign this They Live movie poster. You probably can't see it, but I got him to sign my They Live movie poster. And they showed Hell Comes to Frogtown on a projector screen before he came on stage. What a great film!
I was so shocked because I saw a clip of it on Instagram the other day, and I'm like, okay, I'll think about this later, and went on because someone said, oh, it's showing free on Tubi now. So that night I went and looked, and I couldn't remember anything about it. I just wrote Frog, and it was literally the first thing that came up. It is so silly. It's a post-apocalyptic film. There's been a huge nuclear war. Basically, the human race is infertile except for individuals here and there, which of course Roddy Piper is one of them. And there are also like the nuclear wars created a race of mutant frog people. It's just insane. It's completely insane. It is really funny.
Bananas, yeah.
It is bananas. But again, it's like
I pulled it up on Google. I will watch that this weekend.
And it is a silly movie, but it's actually a good story, as silly as it is. Everything logically follows in the story. And so when I got to the end, I giggled in every scene. It was so insane.
Ross, save some edibles for that.
Yeah, yes.
All right, folks. Well, I'm just gonna recommend something Jeff recommended last week. Me and my wife finally finished Fallout, and I'm a little upset because of that cliffhanger, but that was a great cliffhanger.
That's an even more impactful cliffhanger if you're a game player as well, because where he goes is New Vegas, and New Vegas is one of the Fallout games, and the entire denouement of the game takes place in New Vegas. So it's very exciting that they're going there several years after.
What I like is what makes me think that cliffhanger is so good is now doubled because I don't know any of that, and I was like, oh, he's walking into him and the dog and the girl are going to kick ass somewhere.
Oh, I love that shot of the three of them, and they come out of the bunker, and at first you think he's on his own, and then Lucy comes out, and then Dogmeat comes out, and it's like, ah!
And she's walking like a hero now. Her gun on her back. Yeah, she's changed. It's good. That young lady did a
which is the scene in the second episode where he talks to her by the campfire, and he says, "Will you still want the same things when you've become a different creature?" And it's so clever. It's so good.
I love Walter Coggins, but I really love him in this, I think, and he's done so much good stuff. So. All right, folks, we'll be back next week, this is what, Under the Dome? The next episode?
I
can't remember what it's called. I saw the trailer for it. It looks really...
Well, that also is a recommendation because I noticed, I had forgotten what the next one is. I still don't remember the name of it. It may be Dot and Bubble.
Dot in the Bubble.
It might be Dot and Bubble.
But the main guest star is Callie Cook, who I recently saw in a phenomenally hilarious post-apocalyptic comedy, which all of those words sound insane together, but called Henpocalypse, which is about there's a viral apocalypse during a hen do, during a bachelorette party, and so this group of 6 women have to learn to survive, and it is and there's another, speaking of Frogtown, they come up with a scheme to repopulate the Earth because the only man who survived, like all men died in this plague except the male stripper they brought with them. And Callie Cook in this show is the star, and she is absolutely hilarious. So when I saw her come on the Next Time trailer, I'm like, get in, because it is good.
Yeah.
She is amazing. She is amazing. So go watch Hen Apocalypse.
Okay, I'm gonna have to, Jesus.
It's hilarious. It's insane.
All right, guys. Thanks for being coming on the show again. I will see you next week for Dot in the Bubble, and we look forward to seeing you somewhere in time or space.